Hey guys! Today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. On a sweltering August day in 2020, a 25-year-old nurse went out for her usual jog along a familiar rural road and vanished without a trace. No calls, no texts, not even the faintest sign. Her phone went silent. Social media activity abruptly stopped. For her loved ones, it was the first red flag. For the residents of a small Arkansas town, it marked the beginning of the most extensive search effort they had ever seen. No one could have imagined that this case would involve deception, a mask of respectability, secret surveillance, and a level of cold calculation that defied explanation. But at that moment, there was only an empty road, the evening light, and a young woman who didn't come home. Sydney Sutherland was born in Grubbs, Arkansas, into a modest and close-knit family. She was the youngest of three and had always shared a particularly strong bond with her mother, Maggie. There was no emotional distance between them. They spoke daily, shared everything, and supported one another in every way. Their connection was almost like a mirror reflection. This closeness shaped Sydney's personality. She grew up sensitive, warm, and approachable. She did well in school, carried herself with humility, and valued order and routine. People naturally saw her as reliable. From early on, she had a deep desire to help others, so her decision to become a nurse surprised no one. After graduating high school, Sydney enrolled in a medical program and soon began working at Harris Medical Center, where she quickly earned a reputation as someone who could not only care for patients, but also bring comfort just by being present. Outside of work, she had a full personal life. She lived with her partner, Alex, had dogs, adored her nephews and nieces, and cherished family traditions. Physical activity was a big part of her lifestyle. Exercise helped her manage stress and maintain balance. In August 2020, the family took a vacation to Florida, which turned out to be a particularly special time. They swam, went for walks, took photos, never realizing these moments would be the last from the life they knew. Sydney returned home feeling refreshed and ready to dive back into her routine. Quake was born in the same county and lived just a few miles from Grubbs. He came from a long-standing family of farmers who owned a sizable amount of land. The Llewellyns were well known and respected in the area, viewed as honest, hardworking, and steady people. In 2016, they were even named Farm Family of the Year, a formal but prestigious recognition in Jackson County. From a young age, Quake worked on the farm, handling machinery, helping with seasonal tasks, and carrying out daily responsibilities. His background seemed spotless. No violations, no complaints, nothing that stood out. He was quiet and kept to himself, but never raised concern. Neighbors described him as a bit of a loner, someone who minded his own business and didn't seek attention. He wasn't the social type, but also not someone who raised red flags. More reserved than alarming. No one ever considered that behind this withdrawn demeanor might be something far more unsettling than just shyness. Llewellyn gave no reason to be suspected. He seemed to exist on the outskirts, off the radar, out of conflict, beyond question. And that absence of warning signs became the most dangerous illusion of all. On a scorching day in August 2020, Sydney and Quake's worlds never crossed, at least not yet. Their lives ran parallel. She among people, caring, trust. He among machines, land, silence. They shared only geography and the illusion of safety in a small town where everyone knows everyone. But fate brought them together in a way nobody could have foreseen. August 19th, 2020. The morning started like any other. Sydney Sutherland drove to Jonesboro for her session with a personal trainer at the gym. The workout lasted about an hour. Afterward, she drove home. Security cameras caught her exiting the vehicle, grabbing her things, stepping into the house, then heading out again, dressed in athletic gear, calm, confident, with no visible signs of fatigue or illness. Next, Sydney stopped by her mom's house to drop off accumulated mail from their vacation. The visit was short, the conversation every day. She mentioned she was thinking about baking cookies or brownies. She talked through her plans, mentioned she wanted to go for a run. Her mother gently tried to dissuade her, reminding her she'd already worked out and the day was hot. Sydney just smiled and said the run was more a break than a workout. Before leaving, they exchanged "love you" and "talk soon," their last words. Back home, cameras caught her again as she checked her Apple Watch, tracked her running stats. Then, sometime around 2:30 p.m., she headed out on Highway 18 between Newport and Grubbs. It was a familiar route. She ran it often. The road passed through fields and past several farms with minimal traffic. Quiet, few distractions, good road surface. Around the same time, Quake was in the area, driving his pickup down that very road. He spotted a woman running. She gave no indication of distress, no signals, no gestures. He drove past her then, after a moment, turned around, returned to the same stretch, and began watching her. He slowed down. She continued running, unaware of any danger. Without warning, Llewellyn acted. He abruptly steered his truck toward Sydney and struck her. Later, he would admit he used his vehicle as a weapon. The impact was forceful, and she was thrown to the ground, severely injured and unable to move. Immediately after the collision, he got out of the truck, lifted her body into the bed, and drove off. He exited the main highway and followed a dirt road leading to farmland owned by his family. He pulled over in a secluded spot where no one could see. There, he committed the aggressive behavior. Sydney was in a semi-conscious state. He left her without assistance, without clothes, and without any chance of rescue. After what had already occurred, he made the decision to end her life. According to the coroner's report, Sydney did not pass away immediately. She suffered multiple injuries, including some that were ultimately fatal. Llewellyn did not call for help. He didn't try to flee. Instead, he dug a shallow hole nearby, on the same piece of land his family had worked for years. He placed her body in the ground and covered it with dirt. Then he got back in his truck and drove away. He returned home, took a shower, changed clothes. He hid his soiled clothing in the laundry hamper at his mother's house. Later, he would say he simply panicked, but his actions were deliberate and calculated. He didn't tell anyone what had happened. He went on with his day as if nothing had occurred, ate dinner with family, answered phone calls, acted calm. For hours, he showed no signs of distress. No one around him suspected that he had just committed a violent crime and covered it up. Sydney Sutherland didn't return home that evening, August 19th. Her partner, Alex, wasn't immediately alarmed. At first, he waited. They usually stayed in touch throughout the day, and sometimes there were brief delays in her replies. 30 minutes passed, then an hour. Still no calls, no messages. Her phone rang through to voicemail. She wasn't responding on any messaging apps either. Alex knew this wasn't like her. Sydney was always reachable. Even during workouts, she'd check her phone and reply promptly. He began to worry. At first, he thought maybe her battery had died. But as the minutes ticked by, the worry deepened. He kept calling, sending messages, checking for any sign of activity. The silence became more and more concerning. Alex called Maggie, Sydney's mother. She confirmed that she had seen her daughter earlier that day. They'd talked. Everything had seemed fine. Sydney had said she was going for a run. Maggie assumed she had already made it back home. But when she realized Sydney wasn't answering her phone, she too became concerned. Both began calling friends and family, but no one had heard from her. That evening, August 19th, Alex officially reported her missing. He knew something was wrong. Sydney wasn't the kind of person who disappeared. She never left without telling someone. She always shared her plans, always stayed in touch. Jackson County Sheriff's Office took the report seriously. The sheriff personally knew the family. He'd watched Sydney grow up. He didn't believe for a second that she'd left voluntarily. He didn't wait. By the morning of August 20th, an official search had begun. From the outset, all available resources were activated. Local law enforcement, state investigators, and federal agents joined the effort. The search quickly became one of the largest in county history. The area where Sydney had gone running was combed by both volunteers and police. People came out on their own. Men, women, teenagers, retirees. Some took time off work. Others left their sons and daughters with neighbors. More than 300 people joined the search. They moved fast. Everyone knew. Every minute counted. They started with Sydney's jogging route, checking the roadside, ditches, and tree lines. At the same time, authorities began collecting digital data. Sydney was wearing an Apple Watch and had her iPhone with her. That detail proved critical. Investigators requested data from her cell carrier and Apple. Within a few hours, they received geolocation points. The coordinates pointed to a specific area between Newport and Grubbs, along the highway where she was reportedly last seen. A private delivery driver reported seeing Sydney running along the road on August 19th. He said she looked fine, was alone, and he didn't notice anything unusual. His account confirmed both time and location, aligning with her device data. That helped narrow the search zone. Search teams began to concentrate their efforts in that area. On the morning of August 20th, a group of volunteers found Sydney's iPhone. It was lying on the ground not far from her home. The phone wasn't damaged. It was simply resting in the grass. It looked as though it had been tossed there intentionally. It didn't seem like something that had just fallen. Later, forensic specialists confirmed the phone had been moved. At that point, her disappearance was no longer considered routine. Investigators began treating it as a potential criminal case. Anyone who had been in the area during that time was brought into the scope of interest. Dozens of people were questioned. Among them was Quake Llewellyn. He came into the station voluntarily. He claimed he had seen Sydney and wanted to help the investigation. He said he hoped to be useful and even offered assistance. According to him, she had been running alone and appeared fine. He insisted he didn't notice anything suspicious. At first glance, his account didn't raise any red flags. He even agreed to let investigators examine his truck. His father had no objections either. The inspection began immediately. Officers checked the pickup. During the examination of the truck bed, traces of blood were found. That was the first major inconsistency in Llewellyn's story. Until that moment, he hadn't mentioned any physical contact. The presence of blood shifted the entire investigation. The vehicle was no longer seen as unrelated. It had now become a potential tool in a crime. Investigators then reviewed Llewellyn's digital footprint. His phone's location data revealed that, on the day Sydney disappeared, he had been in the same areas she had. The coordinates matched her movements almost down to the minute. His phone and her devices moved in sync. This wasn't a coincidence. It was direct overlap. Additional evidence surfaced. Security cameras installed on the Llewellyn family's farm recorded footage of Quake's vehicle. First, the truck is seen leaving the property. Then, sometime later, it returns. On the way back, the truck bed is covered with a tarp. Underneath it, there's a noticeable shape, something large, which hadn't been there before. For investigators, that was enough to conclude. His version of events didn't match the facts. Under mounting evidence, Quake Llewellyn began to lose his composure. He was brought in for questioning. At first, he continued to deny involvement. Then, he admitted there had been an accident. According to him, he claimed he hit Sydney unintentionally, blaming dust on the road, poor visibility, and panic. He acknowledged placing her body in the back of his truck and driving away. He said he didn't know what to do, which is why he never called for help. He tried to explain everything as a moment of fear and confusion. But investigators kept pressing. As he started to reveal more, his story shifted. He admitted to removing her clothing, hiding her body, and burying her. He mentioned stashing the clothes he wore during the crime in a laundry hamper at his mother's house. This wasn't panic. These were deliberate actions, an effort to conceal, destroy evidence, and erase traces. During the search of his mother's home, key evidence was uncovered. Among the items, a black shirt and a pair of shorts belonging to Quake. On the clothing, investigators found strands of Sydney's hair, and later, forensic tests confirmed her DNA. These findings directly tied him to the scene at the time of the crime. The pieces were falling into place: witness statements, blood evidence, GPS data, and surveillance footage. The chain of evidence grew stronger. It became clear Quake Llewellyn not only knew what happened but had actively worked to cover it up from the beginning. After the discovery of this evidence, Quake was brought in for a second round of questioning. The pressure increased. Investigators presented him with the facts: GPS coordinates from his phone, video from the farm, blood traces in the pickup, and the hidden clothing. His original story of a tragic accident was no longer holding up. He tried to stay composed, but began to contradict himself. Then came the direct question: what did he do after hitting Sydney? Quake admitted to taking her body to a secluded field owned by his family. There, he removed her clothing and committed aggressive behavior. When asked whether she was still alive at that moment, he didn't give a clear answer. He only said that it happened quickly and felt like a fog. He then buried her in a shallow grave, confident no one would go looking there. He confessed to choosing the location in advance. He knew the land well. After that, he returned home, threw his clothes into a laundry basket, showered, and had dinner. He acted like it was any other evening. His tone remained disturbingly detached. On August 21, 2020, 3 days after Sydney Sutherland went missing, the search came to an end. Law enforcement officers and investigators arrived at the location Quake Llewellyn had described. It was a field owned by his family, far from main roads, in an isolated area. Access was limited. Only someone deeply familiar with the land would know how to reach it. At the exact spot he indicated, officers found freshly disturbed soil in the grass. Beneath the earth, they discovered her body. Experts began processing the scene. The grave was shallow, not meant to conceal anything long-term. The body was positioned in a twisted posture, partially covered with clothing Quake Llewellyn either forgot or chose not to remove. Everything he had admitted was now laid out before investigators. Forensic teams began their examination. It was determined that the cause of death was multiple injuries. Some wounds suggested a struggle, but the primary cause was blunt force trauma, delivered with hands and feet using significant force. Death was not immediate. Prior to that, the victim had been subjected to aggressive behavior. Medical examiners documented evidence that confirmed the crime occurred in stages. First, Sydney was injured when struck by the vehicle. Then, she was placed into the truck, relocated, and assaulted. Only afterward were the fatal blows delivered. Immediately following the recovery of the body, Quake Llewellyn was formally arrested. He was charged with first-degree murder, assault, kidnapping, and desecration of a body. Each of these were serious charges, supported by clear evidence: his own confession, forensic proof, and multiple witness statements. For the Sutherland family, the worst fears were confirmed. The hope that lingered during the early days was gone. Sydney's body had been found buried in the ground, not far from where she was born and raised. News of her death devastated not only her family, but the entire community of grubs. People who had searched for her, volunteers, healthcare workers, school teachers, took the outcome personally. The hardest part was knowing the person responsible had been among them all along, looking her loved ones in the eye, pretending to help. Following his arrest, Quake showed no remorse. He didn't speak out, didn't apologize, and never explained why he did what he did. His demeanor remained calm, almost distant. Officers who transported him later said they noticed no confusion or anxiety. He didn't try to justify himself. He didn't retract his confession. He confirmed everything without emotion. Investigators completed their work. They compiled a full timeline, from the moment Sydney left for her run to the final geolocation ping from her Apple Watch and the eventual discovery of her body. Every part of the sequence was confirmed step by step. Even without his confession, the evidence would have been enough to build a strong case. After the investigation concluded, Quake Llewellyn's case was transferred to the Jackson County District Court. His defense team understood that a jury would most likely return a guilty verdict. In that scenario, he could have faced the death penalty. The defense attorney for the accused filed a motion requesting a psychiatric evaluation. The assessment took several months. By February 2021, the results were in. Quake Llewellyn was deemed competent to stand trial. He understood his actions and was aware of their consequences. The examining psychiatrist stated that Llewellyn did not suffer from any severe mental disorders. His emotional detachment was noted but not classified as a psychological condition. He showed no signs of remorse, nor did he express any sympathy for the victim's family. Investigators confirmed that after the crime, he returned home, showered, had dinner, and behaved as if nothing had happened. The prosecution offered a plea deal, an admission of guilt in exchange for removing the death penalty from consideration. This option was discussed at length with Sydney's family. They did not want a lengthy trial, repeated testimony, or the public dissection of every detail of the crime. It was a painful yet practical decision. They agreed to a life sentence without the possibility of parole. On October 1st, 2021, Quake Llewellyn officially pled guilty to committing the crime and assault. 2 additional charges were dismissed as part of the plea agreement. Sydney's parents and close family members were present in the courtroom. When the time came for victim impact statements, her mother addressed Llewellyn directly. She demanded that he look her in the eyes. She told him he had no right to take her daughter away. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. Sydney's father also spoke. He called Llewellyn a coward and emphasized that his actions were deliberate. The family didn't speak of revenge, they spoke of justice. Their tone wasn't filled with anger, but it conveyed the depth of their loss. Sydney's story serves as a reminder that danger can hide in plain sight, behind the face of someone who appears completely ordinary. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.